Okay. We're here at the property of Mike and Jane Ellen Ross out in the Ozarks, and we're going to do a walk with Burnetta Hinterthur, who's a native plant expert, and we're just going to walk around and see sort of what's available here for our project at the Omni Center. So Burnetta, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background.
Oh, well, I've loved plants since I was a little girl. So I say that's the most important experience for children to get, out in nature. And I grew up on a farm in Kentucky. But my interest heightened when I went to college and found out I could get a degree in that. I was very surprised. So I have a master's in plant taxonomy and worked on a PhD in agronomy. However, I got a chance to work with the Forest Service as a botanist back in 1991 and got to go out and explore the Ozarks. I've really been exploring the Ozarks since 1971 when I first came to graduate school. And I taught botany at Northwest Arkansas Community College for 20 years, or I'm still teaching online, but not botany, just biology. And anyway, my interest in plants has been all my life, I guess. And as I get older, I find I'm more challenged, but I still like to get out and look at plants. So we'll see what we find today.
Okay, well, we'll start our walk.
We got logged like a lot of the Ozarks.
And of course, the way you can tell this quite just by smelling it,
Okay.
And,
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like allspice.
it does, doesn't it? Yeah. Now this
That's
is
almost a
spice
lemony
bush.
smell, too.
It does. It's a
Uh-huh.
lot like sassafras because they're in the laurel family. So
Right.
And do you know how it got used during the Civil War?
no.
Okay. I do living history with the Arkansas Living History Association, mainly portraying what life was like for the women during the Civil War in Arkansas. During the Civil War, when the embargo came in and you couldn't get spices off the river, women in the Ozarks would make a very strong tea from spice bush, cook it down really thick, and then use that as flavoring in their spice cakes in place of allspice and cinnamon.
Wow, neat.
Hence the name.
Hence the name spice bush. And it makes a wonderful tea.
It does.
Yeah.
I was thinking it makes a strong tea. And of course, sassafras anyway is one of the most carcinogenic plants. Which for years I would lead hikes and tell people to make sassafras tea. My dad in Kentucky always made sassafras tea in the spring as a tonic, and we always drank it. And then I found out it has safrole, which is actually a carcinogenic substance. Of course, if you just drink it once a year, in your spring tonic, Dad lived to be 90. So
You probably have to
he
drink
probably
quite
drank
a lot
more
of
than,
it.
and he drank more than anybody I know. So.
So how do you recognize the spice bush? How would you, just the shape of the leaves? Or?
Yeah, because when I see this leaf and I see that it's broad, dogwood has a pretty broad leaf,
Right.
but it has opposite leaves and opposite twigs, and this one's alternate,
Okay.
And so, and then of course the way I definitely do it is to smell it
Right.
before it gets its flowers. If it gets its flowers, then you have a clue, but up until that time, you can be pretty certain.
So that's a dogwood right there, I believe.
So spice bush is one of the plants that we want to harvest from here for the Omni Center grounds. So.
Okay, spice bush, yeah. All right, and these look like they're pretty good size. Are there smaller ones?
Yeah, we'll go with the smaller
Hopefully. Otherwise, we're going to have to
bring
get
a
the
tractor.
backhoe over there.
I heard you could propagate them from the young green shoots and just stick them in some water to root.
Lots of plants you can, and I don't know about this one. I've never tried that one. But you also can put it in moist soil and keep it real humid. Yeah, many trees and shrubs will do that, and some I know because I've done something.
Okay.
Small spice bush right here. It's
There you
right,
go.
right in the middle of the trail.
Oh,
The spice bush, does it flower?
Yes, it has a flower similar to the sassafras, those yellow blossoms. If we did you say there was a dogwood? Where's your
Oh,
dogwood?
well, I think one right there. And I believe that's,
This one, this is probably not something we need to look at, but you can see how the leaves are
Right.
opposite in the tree. But this is the key to this one. If you find probably you would recognize the flowering dogwood, which this one is. But there are, 5 different dogwoods in the Ozarks, yeah.
Okay.
And so if you see a leaf where you have those prominent veins, the lateral veins like that, and then you see that blue-green, most of them do have a little,
Could you show Kelly?
oh, Kelly, I'm sorry. Hi, Kelly. I'm sorry. If you take it and you tear it, it has a character that I don't know any others do. It has sort of elastic veins, and and if you do it, then you can sort of see that they'll stick. They stick together like that, and that's the only tree leaf I know that does that. Although it's might be possible, but you can see those little elastic veins sticking out.
So all of the dogwoods, native dogwoods, are white. Is that?
The white part of this dogwood is a bract. It's a modified leaf, and that's the showy part that people see. And of course, originally thought were petals, and so you say, well, it has 4 petals, but actually, the flowers develop in this little umbel that's right in the center in the center of those.
Okay.
And then inside, if you look, then you'll see the flowers and the seed.
Right.
They're pretty red in the fall. And if you run your hand over the leaf, you can understand why it's called a hound's tongue. It feels like a hound's tongue. And the flower is very sort of subtle, but a clue to what family it's in is that it has that spiral inflorescence like that, which is typical of the borage family. So,
I know. Eventually it does look like borage.
see how they unfold like in a spiral.
Okay.
And so
Hound's tongue.
hound's tongue. Senoglossum, Glossum is the genus of that one, and this is more than I've ever seen in one set.
It's everywhere around here in the woods.
It really is. It's like, my gosh, it's a forest. These coming up.
Mayflower?
May apple.
Mayapple.
The May apple. Yeah. These are probably the
Little,
first year.
very young mayapple.
Very young May apple.
Yep.
And the May apple, branches, and it doesn't produce a flower until it's probably 2 years old, and it has 2 stalks. So we may see some down here.
Yeah, they're already blooming.
Yeah.
I've seen them.
What do you all call this plant? I always like to see wood sorrel, and that's the correct name for it. A lot of people, here it is, right here with the flower. You got it. See, I can't see what you're seeing, so I'm really confused. But yeah, that's a beautiful plant. That's the violet wood sorrel and oxalis. And oxalis, the leaves were used in salads because they're pungent, or and so they would throw a few of those in their salad. But you can't eat a bunch of those because they have oxalic acid. So, if you eat them, you feel this little sort of prick on your tongue or whatever, and the same way with the the Indian turnip. What else? What's the other? But anyway, in the rhizome, the Native Americans used to pound it into a flour and use it. But if you just eat it raw, then your mouth. My dad said the first time he saw one, he knew what it was called, and he took a big chunk and ate it, and then spit out the lining of his mouth. So this one looks like the tooth wart to me. Is that not right? It's in, one thing you know is it's in the mustard family. And that's because of those fruits. See those fruits with the seed in them?
And it's called what?
It used to be called the crucifer family because these sort of come out slightly at a right angle on the stem. But they're called saliques. The kind of fruit they are, that long, narrow fruit with lots of seed in them. And to me, it looks a little bit like toothwort, but I can't see the leaf. But there is one called rock cress, Arabis, that looks a lot like that too. So we'll have to.
You can eat it?
Can you eat it? Usually they do give you nutrition. In fact, of course, this family is a very important family for anti-carcinogenic. Is it the Brassicaceae, which of course the cabbage and kale and
Broccoli.
everything comes from. Yeah, broccoli. And I always told my students they need to learn to love one of the vegetables from this family because it really does help prevent cancer.
That's funny. Those are about the only vegetables I do love.
Yeah. And there may be a reason for that, you know.
So this is, back there is the 10 acres. This is the start of the 100 acres under the conservation easement.
Oh, yeah. Yes, here's another spring ephemeral, which is, can you see that one, Kelly? And that family, many of the flowering plants have either, the dicots have either 4 or 5 petals, but this is the ranunculus lacey in that family, and it has, I think, generally 6. You know, it has a little different number. Some are 6, some are 5, but this is a rue anemone.
Rue and
Rue.
R-U-E.
R-U-E, which here I'm sort of destroying it, aren't I? And
It says 7.
that's got 7. Okay, yeah, it can vary. The hepaticas, you know, that come out. I don't know if you're familiar with the hepaticas are in this family. And then the anemones in this, but they call this false anemone. And
We saw a lot of those. Yeah.
yeah, and it has a little whorl of flowers there. If you see the leaves are whorled beneath it. Yeah, it's all over.
That we'll need to be working on eradicating.
Yes, and it's
Switchgrass.
it's that grass. You know
Yeah.
what that is?
Yeah, the stilt grass, Japanese stilt
Right.
grass.
Japanese stilt grass are Japanese stilt grass, and you know grasses usually have more narrow leaves. So this one is quite a pretty one. Micranthus.
You say stilt?
Stilt, S-T-I-L-T. Let's see, Japanese stilt grass, and it's another name I can't think of. But this came over in a shipment of ceramics from China, and I think it was in the 70s, and now it's almost everywhere.
Yeah, it's really aggressive and invasive.
So probably, what's the best thing to do with it? Because obviously I'm not going to hose the place down with Roundup.
No,
There's not much you can do.
there's
Just-
not.
It's just here and just
Surrender.
know that it's not surrender.
I wonder.
Yeah,
Yeah,
more
plant
natives.
natives, yeah, to
Yeah.
shade it out, I guess. But you know, I don't know if goats would eat it or not.
This is kind of the trail path. It
Right.
has a little
Yeah,
spreading.
it's not out in the woods.
You know, the spice bush.
And that's the thing. And edges, that's where you get your introduced invasive species coming in, wherever there's enough light. So the good thing is once you get to where it's more shady and you have more canopy, a lot of times you find that you don't get these.
Encourage the canopy.
You guys recognize this splotchy leaf? Here, this is one that people wait for in the spring to start seeing blooming. And what do you call this?
My guess is trout lily.
Trout lily? That is a good guess. And let me look up something and tell you what the other, you know, most plants have more than one common name. And a lot of times the common name makes sense.
of the spots on the
Yeah.
trout lily.
Right. Of course, it is in the lily family. A lot of times something will be called a lily that's not in the lily family, and you find that out later. But this is the white trout lily, and then we should have
They
the
call it dogtooth violet.
dogtooth violet right here. Notice it's not a violet. It's not in the
No.
violet family, but it's called that.
Huh.
And then I wanted to find the other one, this one. And again, it calls it yellow dogtooth violet. But definitely trout lily is a lot more correct.
Okay.
And it says that erythronium, which is the genus name, means red purple. And so you find that often you'll find on the back of the leaves, you'll find a lot of purple coloration too. So the naming is very interesting. And it makes sense a lot of times, you know.
What has happened?
Probably the fact that she was saying that, you know, you got rid of a lot of
The goats ate out the briars and
Okay.
crap down here.
Yeah, and that's one thing. So, of course, birds scatter the seed of the spice bush, but as we know, they also produce, you know, little runners and so forth as well. And this is probably a stage of succession. And the soil here, if it hasn't been disturbed, is probably very rich, which normally if you see a spice bush, you pretty well know that you've got some rich soil, you know.
That's a good thing.
And
And spicebush also supports at least 2 or 3 varieties of butterfly,
right,
does it not?
yeah.
Yeah.
And in the past, there's certain things you look at in grasses in order to identify them. And here's I don't know if you've noticed what again the florets or the inflorescent looks like, but you often see the base of this grass has this little stipule enlarged there at the base, and often that's a characteristic. I would think it's a brome grass
A brome
of some kind.
of variety.
But I don't know which one, and I may be totally wrong. But when it flowers, if you send me a picture of the right here, see, Kelly, how those leaves are in a whorl under that inflorescence. There is let me see what the other false anemone. And I'll show you. Maybe they'll have this.
That one up here.
Yeah.
Oh, this one up here was?
This is a pretty common one that we see, and it's recognized by that whorl of leaves under the flowers. But there is another plant, and here's Isopyrum. This one is rue anemone, and rue, of course, sort of means false, I think. So, and then this one is false rue, meaning it's not this one. All right, and so this one I find
Not confusing at all.
yeah, I find this a lot less commonly. And the leaves here, if you notice under the inflorescence, they're not in that whorl of, so that's a good guide to that. And the habitat is wooded slopes for this one, and for the other one, moist bottomlands, which pretty soon we'll probably be in, right? So maybe we'll find one. Yeah, okay. Nice. Now, this one is one of the more common ferns you see in the Ozarks, and it's Christmas tree fern. And it's green into the winter, and that might be one reason, but a friend of mine, Sandy Tedder, tells the story to her class, and so I thought, well, I guess I'll buy that one too, because if you look, this looks like a Christmas stocking. So this is a Christmas fern. And the ferns are interesting. You really have to develop an eye, to me. Like I can identify probably 10 ferns on site because, again, if you look at the spores under a microscope, you can maybe figure it out. But just on site, you have to train your eye, and you can do it, you know. And in the times I've been out in the woods a lot, I've got to where I can identify more. But, you know, just right now, I'd say maybe 10 tops, and there's many ferns in the Ozarks, of course. So. Oh, yes, Do you remember that we saw that little bitty buttercup up at the top? Do you remember the little buttercup with the 5 petals that were almost unnoticeable? Well, this is one of those that has the non-showy flowers. And let's see.
That's a type of buttercup?
It is.
Oh.
And they do not have showy flowers at all. The leaf is pretty distinct, you know. And again, it's in the ranunculus family, same as that false anemone. There's many things in that family. Oh, here's one you know, I'm sure, or you've experienced, and that is this. And these are the little bitty, well, pardon me, plants. See the, oh, here it goes.
Broom straw?
Uh-huh, yeah. Yeah, bed straw. I think I call it bed straw. This one is cleavers. It's another name. That's the one that if you throw it someone, it'll stick on you from the sticky hair.
Sticky weed, yeah.
And supposedly the settlers would stuff their mattresses with this because it gave a little buoyancy. But can you imagine sleeping on that? I think it would be itchy, I don't know. And again, look at just what's going on down here. Here's another plant, and it is, I don't know that it's in that same family as the hound's tongue, and the inflorescence looks very similar. So it's a borage of some kind, and probably lithospermum, or if you got small flowers, you probably won't be in the flower book. That's that's something you have to watch out for.
Those are practically microscopic.
They are, yeah. Yes. And another one. In fact, one of those is hairy, and this one is smooth. So I would think that would definitely idea is either that micranthus or no, I've changed my mind now. Let's see. I think that this one is spring. I think this one is gem instead, and it looks so much like it, you know. But notice that the petals are divided. You see that that they're, you know, they're divided. I think this one, and that's the problem. There's a lot of things that look like these guys in the spring, and gem, G-E-U-M. It's in the rose family. You see how the seed up there, they almost resemble a strawberry, or a little bit like that. It's like they keep us on our toes because there's about 5 different genera that look almost exactly like this plant, and unless you, and I haven't gotten I should be giving you the loop to look through these at, but well, it describes it on 248. But there's no picture in this book anyway. It's called Spring Water Avens. Flowers are very small, yellow, only 1/6 of an inch across. And the leaves are trifoliate, meaning, you know, they have 3, right like that, 3 lobes or 3 leaflets. And so neat. Again. And I'm pretty sure that's toothwort instead of that rock cress. But you can see why we go slow, because there's always a million challenges, and that's why I pass up just the leaves by themselves. Otherwise, we definitely wouldn't make any. Here's the toothwort.
This
What
is
it
giving
looks
us
like.
a tremendous start on our botanical inventory.
Oh well. Oh, yeah.
Is toothwort one of the ones that's gets soapy, saponifies when you?
Let's see. I think that's sapon. It might. I've never heard that.
Okay.
But yeah, but saponaria is one that they call soapwort.
Okay.
And I'll show you it. And I think it comes out a little later. The soapwort is. See, that's one bouncing bat.
Similar little fruits, sort of.
Yeah, they're elongated, right? And you notice they have opposite leaves too, so that's a different, that helps too. Early spring flower, Jacob's ladder, and you recognize that one just by its leaves. So that's one that you can recognize by the leaves because they've many small leaves.
Which one?
This one right here, the
really?
compound leaf
Okay.
one. Show you a picture.
It's called
Jacob's ladder because of those
ladder-looking leaves.
ladder-looking leaves. Here's the picture of the flower. April to June. Leaves are basal, and so that means they come out, of course, from the base, and the stems are pinnately compound. So this means this is a compound leaf. So you have, those are leaflets, not leaves. You know, it's just one leaf has the node. And recognizable?
I'm not good on that.
Maidenhair fern, right. Maidenhair fern, and it has the two stalks, and then they, sort of make a semicircle. So there's quite a bit of maidenhair. And then look at the fiddlehead that, see the fiddlehead is the part of as the leaf is unfurling, it comes out, and it's called a fiddlehead. And those are edible.
Yeah.
One time a class, we collected a whole sack full, like a big paper sack full, and we had a wildflower meal. And that was one thing we did. But what you have to do is scrape those scales off. Oh my gosh, that took hours and hours
They
to
don't
scrape
cook
those off.
off, huh?
No. Well, they actually, in retrospect, it might be that if we cooked them more thoroughly, perhaps they would have softened anyway. But we clean them off and then put them in flour and fry them in butter.
Those furry ones.
Fiddlehead fern,
Yeah.
yeah.
Now
Okay.
this is fine if you're doing the Christmas tree fern,
Right.
but the bracken fern is poisonous.
Okay.
It's very poisonous. So
Ah.
you want to make sure you know which ones you're collecting it from.
I always thought that the fiddlehead ferns you could eat were really smooth, and that the ones with fur on them were poisonous. So you're saying from Christmas tree ferns.
That's not always the case,
Okay.
But the bracken fern is I would think it was just the opposite. Okay, all right. And this one is in the lily family, and is a bellwort. You see how the leaf looks like it's coming up? I mean the stem looks like it's coming through the leaf there. That's one of the identifiable characteristics of it. Bellwort. And there are, I think, 3 species. Uvularia is the genus, for this one. And the stems are smooth, usually forked, and the flowers are nodding. You see, they're not, aren't open, so they're not as showy, but they do hang down like that. And the leaves are perfoliate, and that means completely surrounding the stem.
Okay.
Rich wooded slopes is where you find those. And the uvularia comes from the Latin word uvula, which we all have, right? A small conical body in the center of the human palate, which the flower resembles.
Okay.
Grandiflora is a common, a real common one. So it's possibly that one. And behind you, I think there's a better example of.
Let me get out of the way.
Yeah. Oh, right here. Do you recognize this plant? This is another one. If you touch it, you realize how sort of water-filled it seems. And this is a jewelweed.
Oh, okay.
And if you look at the the stem right up here, it just fills engorged with water or with mucilage. And so those are the leaves of the jewelweed.
Jewelweed, is that like an antidote to poison ivy, or is that a...
I think that would help because it would help wash off the oils of the poison ivy. And any plant that has nice mucilage or water, lots of water in it. But still, that's one that is a beautiful flower too. And if you've ever collected it, it disappears real fast. Just sort of vanishes as soon as you pick it. And one of the ones that come out first in the Ozarks, you probably recognize the, well, let me see if I got one with the flower here. The chickweed. And
It makes a lovely tincture too.
a lovely tincture.
Yeah.
And what do you use to...
It's medicinal for just general supporting the immune system.
Okay. Probably has lots of vitamin C and...
Yes.
And and chickweed's one that the pioneers did make salads out of. They were excited to get this. And of course, we now just sort of resent it when it shows up in our our yards because it covers everything. That's a beautiful one. And what kind of maple? Does anyone? A red maple? What?
A red maple?
I think it's well. Yes, I think so. Look at see the sort of the blue. There's a name for the bloom. I think is sometimes what they call that blue. But you can tell if it's sugar or not by the indentation in the lobe. Have you heard that? That if it's sugar maple, it has a U. So it'll be a U. So this one's definitely a V.
All right.
So red maple and silver maple both have that V. And can you tell, Michael, that bloom always makes me think silver, but the leaf, to me, I've got a great big silver maple in my yard, so I think this is more like you were calling
I
red.
don't recall this ever being red, so
Yeah.
we've been down here, so my guess would be silver.
Yeah, well, the habitat, makes you think silver too. But again, some things you just have to wait for the flower or the fruit in this case, and you often find out in the wild, and it's a rose, and you may wonder, well, which rose is this? And if you see this one characteristic, this fringed, you see how stipules are little leaf-like structures at the base of roses and peas, and this one is fringed. See how it's divided like that? So this is actually a multiflora rose, and that is an introduced species, the multiflora rose. It smells wonderful, and it's a beautiful flower, but it was introduced, and I think possibly some of the government agencies, like soil conservation, different ones, who gave these out for habitat, for cover, for wildlife cover, and so on.
Where did the fringe come from?
The fringe is right here at the base. At the base of the roses and the peas, you'll see a little green-like tissue on the stem. And this one, see, is broken into many little pieces like a fringe.
So that helps identify it if you're trying to get it out, but you don't want to be taking out
Right.
somebody else
Well,
that
the native
belongs
ones.
here. Yeah.
Right.
And the native ones are smooth.
Yeah, they're entire.
Okay.
Yeah, they're entire. So it would just be a little green piece of tissue. instead of fringed. This guy is one of my favorites, and I only see one, but see the leaves, they're sort of delicate, and this is Osmorrhiza, which is called wild anise. You know, there's two different species, and one has a really strong licorice smell in the rhizome, and I think they'll have the pictures. Sweet Sicily is another name. Let's see, and I always get mixed up which one is the one that's here's the picture of the Sweet Sicily. Woolly Sweet Sicily. It's a herb that gets to 3 feet tall. The root's like a carrot and highly aromatic with anise or licorice smell. And Osmorrhiza, which is the genus, sometimes they make sense, means aromatic root. So sometimes when they name them, they do us a favor, and sometimes they don't. So.
Yeah.
So do you think the leaf would smell a little bit like that?
I've never noticed the leaf smelling, but if you were to dig the root of it, definitely would. But you can try it and see. I can't smell anything, but
Yeah, I don't know if I can either.
maybe if you crush it.
Not really.
Not really. So if we saw a whole bunch more, we could dig one up and smell it or taste it. But see, isn't that pretty? I think
I'll
that's
definitely be keeping an eye out for how prevalent it is.
yeah. And
Any ideas on what would be the best way to encourage it to spread? Like a seed scattering or saving?
maybe if we remove the spices,
Give it a little light?
give it a little bit more.
And this
light.
again is called?
It's called a Sweet Sicily or anise root. And let me see if they list both species in here, but and it blooms, I guess. Yeah, it says April to June. Rich wooded slopes or bottomlands. Spermum or vents. I doubt it's in here just because it's so not noticeable. The flower is just so. Family is the houndstone, with a spiral-shaped inflorescence. And one that you do know that's in that family is the puccoon. In fact, that looks a little bit like that leaves that we were looking at back on the prairie at Omni a while ago. See the hairy stem? So that's probably what that was. It was in that family anyway. Lithospermum means stone, seed, and the seed is very, very hard, as you might. And then also gray hairy because of the fact that the stems are often hairy. This one's not as hairy as the puccoon.
And again, that was?
This is, I know the scientific name. It's in the borage family, but I can't think of the common name of that one, again, because it's so Lithospermum arvens. It's pretty common. And look at all the jewelweed down here, so it's getting moisture too. It's getting, you can tell that we're picking up some moisture here. But this is a trillium. Now, until the flower is out, I have no clue which one. Because there's, again, about 6. Seems like there's about 6 of everything. Trillium means 3, and lily. Handy. With DNA, with working out the genetics of the plants, we found out that some of the plants we put in the same family, now they belong to a different family, or they're closer to a plant in a different family. So, it's but to me, just going on a nature hike, you can't take and analyze. That would even slow you down further. And so, but what you can do is you can at least recognize those characteristics you see with the naked eye. And to me, I don't think that will ever go out of style, because we want to know when we go out what to call something.
Down here.
Okay. And then this one is nice because you see the thumbprint. It looks like it's got a thumbprint on its. In fact, this is a good family. Sorry, Guy, for pulling you. But do you know this one, Sarah? Have you ID'd these? It's so great when you get a family that really is distinct and has distinct characteristics. This one, right around where the leaf is attached at the node, you have a sheath.
Yeah.
And it also, a lot of times the stem bends where that's located, and so it's called the Polygonaceae, the many knees, and it's in the smartweed family. You've heard of it. And then this one with the thumbprint identifies this particular species.
Thumbprint.
A cute plant. This is a fumitory right here. See the leaves, how divided they are, and you know how sort of gentle. Fumitory. And of course, yeah, you can tell it's in that family close to the brassicas.
Like F-U-M-A-T-O-R-Y?
Yeah, F-U-M-I-I-T-O-R-Y. So yeah, there's just a lot of things you're finding here now that go with the creek bank and the moisture habitat.
What is that?
This one I think is winter creeper is the common name for this one, and it's like the periwinkle. It's a viney thing that spreads commonly. Yeah.
Forest with just it's like covered in it.
Yeah.
And
Right.
when
Is
we're
it invasive?
It's invasive. This is an invasive introduced species and probably carried by birds, I would maybe guess.
when
but
we're doing wintertime trail and fence maintenance, mainly just pull it
Pull
up
that
as much
up,
as we can
yes,
and bag it and burn it.
right. That's what I do in my yard. And there's another one similar. I think this is the winter creeper, but the Oriental bittersweet, which you hear bittersweet and you think, great, you know, I want it. But if it's Oriental, what it does is it grows up the trees and will shade the trees and kill large trees. I've cut really large stems of that off my oak tree because, you know, eventually it will kill the trees if it gets that high. Because it's everywhere.
Honeysuckle vine.
Honeysuckle vine,
The
Japanese
honeysuckle.
Japanese honeysuckle.
It's not a vine. Is that the vine or is that a?
Yeah, see how it
Oh, okay,
trails?
yeah.
Yeah, this is that one. Of course, the bushy honeysuckle is all over northwest Arkansas too.
Okay. Standalone.
Reds, you know, and let's see. So when people started looking and trying to describe plants, they often gave it a name. What would you call this name if you saw this on the stem there? What does it look like? Like the little
Caterpillars?
tissue? It looks like caterpillar. It's called wingstem.
Wingstem.
Wingstem. It's in the plant. It's in the aster family, and there's 3 species. This one I think is maybe one that has yellow flowers later in the summer. Verbacina is the genus of it. Verbesina.
What are frost flowers?
Frost flowers are certain plants that the sap stays up in the stem into the late, fall, and if it cracks, then the sap comes out and forms a flower. One of ice crystals that looks like the flower. And again, Verbacina is just a big. It's just a big nuisance in my yard because it just, spreads all over. Downy phlox.
Okay.
It's got soft hairs on the leaves and sometimes on the stem. You can see the little hairs, little white stuff on the stem a little bit if you look closely. Actually, I should be letting you use. Of course, our naked eye can't see a lot, and that's why it's always good to carry a lens. But if you look at the stem, you know, you can sort of see those hairs. And that's a 10X lens, so
Isn't there a native periwinkle that has a purple flower like this?
no.
No. Okay.
Now periwinkle is, all of the periwinkles are vines,
Okay.
and their flower looks like that though. You know,
Okay.
yeah, you can the color is very similar, and even I think it has 5 petals. So let's see if they even put that in here. Anybody want to?
I have no idea. I'm not a plant.
Okay.
Wild onion.
A wild onion or garlic, and let's see.
It's a wild onion or a wild garlic?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Tastes like onions.
Tastes like onion.
Okay.
Yeah,
Taste test reveals wild onion.
wild onions, that's right. So this is one of the alliums, A-L-L-I-U-M, and I have to look at these under a microscope sometimes before I can be sure of which species it is. But here's one of the ferns I recognize, because see how these are called the frond is the whole thing, and then each of those sections, those 2 lower ones bend back down. And so that one I recognize and can't remember the name. But that is a very identifiable characteristic. I think it's a Botrychium, but why can't I remember that? It'll come to me, or I'll look it up and send it to you. But that one is a nice, you know, it's nice when they have identifiable characteristics. Otherwise, you have to train your eye to see the individual little
Yeah, that one's
penny.
very distinct.
Yeah.
With the, looks like the leaves kind of grow together at the stem.
Right. Okay, let's see if I can. If it'll come up. Here's some more of that
Everybody should do it now.
vernal gem that we saw up there at the top. This plant right here, how it comes out in the flower at the top. Like the leaves look like the strawberry, don't they? But they have yellow flowers, so they're the false strawberry. If it's a vine, you know, and you see the flower hasn't opened up, but you can tell it's going to be yellow.
There's a yellow one.
Did they just pass one? Yeah, over here's a better example. And it's in the rose family. Again, you see it has 5 petals. Of course, I knocked those off. There might be one over there showing a little bit. But this trail is on the ground, and when I moved into my house, it didn't have. But instead of being in the genus with the strawberries, it has a very different name. Let's see, Duchesnea. Yeah, indica. And here's a good picture of it. Indian strawberry is what they call it here, but I've also called it strawberry, mock strawberry in Indian. And then, of course, the native one is white flowered, and the smartweed, and so you see that we're sort of diverse, but yet a lot of botanists call this the desert because we have many fewer plant species than, say, the Appalachians, you know, where they have the differences in elevations. And but then the Rockies, because of extreme elevation, have fewer species than the Ozarks. Do you know which state has the most species of all the states?
Oregon.
Oregon. Okay.
Maine.
Maine is pretty cold.
Oh.
Yeah, so
Florida.
Florida would have quite a few. Would you expect there to be a lot of introduced species in Florida?
Probably, yeah.
Probably. And how about Hawaii? Hawaii is definitely one. And California, in the mainland California. And then Nevada, oddly enough. And when I first went to the desert, you know, I was expecting sand, but I got to go to the Sonoran Desert in southwest Arizona. And it was amazing how much diversity they had because they generally do not have a frost. So, so they just have so many species of cacti and different plants that, of course, we don't have here. But anyway, it's interesting.
Yeah.
But Arkansas is, 2,000 species, I think, maybe?
Well, you told me what
Let's
it
see if anybody recognizes this one. This is one that is, edible, supposedly. I don't like the taste of it. But it's often a weed in our yards. And dock. And dock is in that smartweed family. And curly dock.
It can be kind of bitter
Right, that's what I think.
if you don't care for the bitter taste.
Yeah, that's what anything I've tried to eat of that has been. So, and I believe there is a native one, but this one I do not believe is native. Let's see, look at this little Indiana book has more pictures of more species, and we have many, many of these kind of species. So that's why I got this.
Is dock the one where its seeds are, they made the, that sticks to stuff with the little barbs? What are they called? Hitchhikers?
That's that smartweed. Yeah, smartweed. I think that's Virginia smartweed. And the little, the little
Beggar's
seed. No, not
No, beggar's slice?
Bigger slice is in the pea family.
Okay.
And then this one, the little seeds have this little hook, like you're saying.
That they
you
develop
see.
Velcro from.
Because it's something we use to chervil.
Herbal.
Chervil.
That's a wild chervil.
Uh-huh.
I thought it looked like something we just identified earlier. It's different.
It does. It does. It's in the same family and everything. But this one, I believe, is. Of course, not in here because the foliage.
Oh.
Box elder?
Box elder does have those trifoliate leaves. Yeah, here it is. You can see it. See the green stem? I wasn't seeing the green stem. And and so if it has a green stem, that's a good idea. And it looks a little bit like poison ivy leaves. So a lot of people, when they're young like this, they'll think it's poison ivy.
Oh,
You know,
no. So it is a box elder?
it is a bit.
You're saying this, you're calling this a stem?
Yeah, See right here how green it is down here, the green stem. So if it has that and those poison ivy looking leaves, it's probably up there at the base of the moss. That one is called ebony spleenwort. Spleenwort, S-P-L-E-N.
Good for your spleen.
You're gonna have to give Michael a workout there.
Yeah. So
And
this
got-
guy?
Yeah, that guy.
Say it again. Say the name again.
It's ebony because, the stalk is black. Ebony spleenwort. W-O-R-T is the Old English word for plant. And I didn't know what that was until I was reading Chaucer. And it used the word wart, and I looked and it said the Old English word for plant. So anytime you see W-O-R-T, it doesn't mean it causes wart, it causes
Like
warts.
hogwarts.
Yeah.
Burdock?
And I'll get the, maybe a good picture of it so we can see for sure. There's
Burdock?
a burdock, I believe.
Yeah, we got.
Burdock is this one here, common burdock, Arctium lapa.
Strong or not?
But Arctium minus is, they're both introduced.
50 feet the other way.
They're both introduced. I'm
yeah.
surprised. I thought one of those was common. Of course, the cocklebur is near that too, and they're all in the Aster family. So that's a woodsea
It's a fern.
fern. Then there's another ebony spleenwort, that little black stem one. So I don't think we saw this one before, did we?
What is the name again?
It's woodsea. W-O-D-S-I-A is the genus. And I don't know the common name.
We're going to take a quick look at harvesting native plants. In this case, spice bush. We've got a very small bush here that Mike Ross is working around with a pick because the Ozark soils are so rocky. So just kind of breaking the soil around the plant. The object is to get as much as the main root ball as possible, and then coming in with a sharpshooter, again working around the plant. Fortunately, spice bush is very hardy and can take a little bit of abuse, but just cutting around some of the smaller roots and getting as much as the main root system as possible. We're working outside the conservation easement here on the Ross's personal property near their future home. There's a lot of spice bush because the deer don't like to eat them. If you see nothing but spice bush in an area, that can be an indication of overpopulation of deer. But just we put it in a bucket and actually had it in the bucket for a while, maybe a couple of weeks, watering it, covering up the roots so that there's no roots exposed to the sun, because that will kill it, and then planted it at the Omni, and it's done pretty well.